Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Super excited for my next guest. His name is Bill Gross. He's the host of Probate Weekly, the largest real estate podcast in the U.S. About probates. Born in Santa Monica, California, Bill's been in real estate for over 30 years. He's closed thousands of transactions and now spends the majority of his time helping others achieve their real estate goals. Bill, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to catch up with you, Benson.
Yeah. So tell me a little
watch
bit
you on your
about
podcast all the time. It's nice to be able to play back and be on it.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your path to specializing in probate. It's definitely one of those places where there's misconceptions about operating in the probate space. People seem to think it's kind of the holy grail of lead generation, but don't really understand it. Tell me about that.
Sure. I started in the business in mortgages, actually, which I think is good training for a realtor to learn the transactions. And I did that until the mortgage meltdown in about 2008, where I think I had about 19 business cards in 18 years, and I never changed companies. And I realized that if I was going to control my own business, I needed to find something I had more control over. So I went into real estate. I had done some deals as well, but I went in full-time in 2009. And as an agent, and then around 2014, 15, my coach and mentor hired me to be a coach and mentor and ultimately an executive in a company. And I was one of the top recruiters, and I was a very successful coach and manager. We doubled our footprint as a company. But I wasn't enjoying it because I had gotten into real estate because I really wanted to have my own business. And I didn't like the owner anymore. I didn't like the way he treated me. I didn't like the way he treated the other employees. And so I knew I wanted to get back into sales, but I wasn't sure the niche. I did know I needed to have a specialty. And what I knew at the time was that success was critical on being an expert in something. Could be your local neighborhood, and I looked at that. That didn't really fit me. But I had seen probate as a coach and manager. I'd seen presentations, and very few people actually went in all in. You know, like in poker, if you were playing, you put all your chips in because you're confident you have the winning hand. And I went all in. I took a training class, Probate Mastery. In the class, the coach challenged us to go to court once and check it out. I did. Loved it. It's not for everybody, but it's for me. And so I started going. My lead generation was going to court every day for about 3 to 4 hours and meeting people there. And I did that until COVID, and then moved to an online format where I do podcasting and videos. But in the last 6 years, I've built a great business selling and listing properties, which I do every day. I'm also with the real estate company XP, where I have other agents who come to and are in my downline. That's been great. I work with some national vendors and refer business out to both people in and outside my team nationally. I talk to real estate agents and attorneys across the country about probate to learn how to do it better and to share, systems for success. I don't hear you.
Background noise there for a second.
Oh.
Now that you've niched down into, focusing on probate, what are some of the things that people don't know about it but should?
I think a couple things. One is that you have to have a broader, you have to be willing to solve more problems. Back in 1980s, there was a great book called In Search of Excellence about the best American companies. And they said one of the keys was that these companies were focused on one thing. McDonald's, they pointed out, had hamburgers and fries and fish sandwiches and Cokes. Well, today they have, breakfasts, and they have salads, and they have all kinds of stuff because they had to meet their customers' needs. I think as realtors, the same thing. It's nice to say, well, I don't do that because it's hard, but you have to find a way to help your customer. And if you don't know how to do it, then you need to know who knows how to do it. And so I'd say every realtor should learn the basics. You should learn how to avoid probate with proper estate planning. Very important in California in particular, but most states as well, Florida, New York. You can put property in a trust, avoid probate in most cases. So you should learn how to do that. You should be able to prep your customers when they're buying property to set it up properly. Get involved with an estate planning attorney to refer them to. So I would say be aware of the problems your customers have and be willing to either solve them or know the guy who will solve the problem for all of them.
Yeah. And so there's two sides of this, right? There's the customer who potentially gets in a situation where they don't have a will, their property isn't properly protected, so they have to go into this probate process. And there's the agent who comes in who doesn't really understand it. Where do you think the biggest problem is? Is it kind of just dual-sided, or do you think it can be solved from one end to the other?
Well, I think that, in a world where businesses try to standardize and create processes, probate inherently is very individual. The real estate's individual, the agent, the customer, the probate case. There's certain common issues and problems that you want to learn and over time add to your toolbox. So, for example, one thing I learned early on was people, in many cases, inherited property but had no money. So one tool I needed was, how do I help them get money to file the probate, advertise the probate, even if you don't pay the attorney's fees till the end, there's certain money up front you need to advance in California in particular, maybe $2,000, and some people just don't have $2,000 to spare. So I had to solve that problem for them somehow. Either I would advance it, or I found companies that would do that. Other people need money right away for other things, moving out, medical expenses, funeral expenses. So that was another tool I learned how to add in. Finding good attorneys. There's different types of attorneys. There's quick, lickety-split, simple attorney filings and closings, and there's litigation attorneys, and there's complicated probate. So, all those are different scenarios with different tools that you want to put and add to your toolbox over time. And so I try to tell agents, your job over time is to learn and grow and improve your, offering. And in some cases, that's what you do. In other cases, it's somebody who does that. It's just a mindset shift, I think.
Yeah. So probate laws vary based on state, right? Mm-hmm. Or is it city? Is it state or city?
Probate laws vary by state, and then there's individual county rules that vary by county. And so the business in LA is very different than the business in Orange County. They have the same laws, but LA County Superior Court has different rules than, say, Orange County, California does.
So being how's that data around how those different scenarios operate is so different. Is there a central location that people can go to find out how to operate in their state, or do they have to just go on a wild goose chase?
Well, there's a couple good resources that I recommend. One is there's a website, Executorium, EXECUTORIUM.com. And on the website, they have a couple different tabs, and one of them is for resources, state and local government. You click on it, put in your state, your county, and they link to your county and state websites. And some are more robust than others. In Los Angeles County, our county offers a lot of resources. Some counties and some states offer a lot less, but at least you'll find whatever's available. Mm-hmm. I always tell an agent, if you're going to do this business, you should learn everything that's available in your county court website and your state website on probate court. You should know everything that's available publicly. It's not that much, especially nowadays. You can download it. I used to have to go to court to get it. Probate laws are usually available online. Like there's online, you can search things and get the answers online, or you can buy the book. I buy the California Probate Code book every year when it comes out, keep it on my desk. People will say to me, I get this all the time, attorneys will say, well, you're not an attorney, how do you know that? They're not saying it like, thank you, or I respect you. It's like, well, you're not an attorney, as if I can't know that. And I say, well, it's funny, I have the probate code book right here, and it's written in English, and I read English.
Right.
So it's not that difficult. Like, attorneys will make it sound like there's some magic language. Maybe it wasn't what time in Latin or Greek or something, but it's all written in English. So it doesn't mean I can give legal advice, but it does mean that I can be smart enough to read it and know what the rules are.
Oh, yeah, and then the other side of the coin there is that not every lawyer knows probate law. So just because they're a lawyer comes in and they're talking about probate, people think they should be put on a pedestal and immediately you should believe everything they say, whereas probably 80% of the lawyers out there know less about probate than you do.
Definitely. In fact, I can say in LA County, 90% of probate court cases are handled by attorneys who've done one or less in the prior 12 months. Now, I've checked in LA. I asked people, check your county. You'll find the same stats. And if you don't, let me know. Nobody's ever come back to me to let me know different. And it's just because, like any business, people struggling will take business that they shouldn't. They don't really know much about. Customers don't know how to shop effectively. And what I found was that 9% of customers love their attorney they pick for the first 30 days, and they hate them after 90 days, 9% of the time. Why? Well, because the attorney doesn't really know what they're doing, A, or B, the attorney is not effective at communicating what they're doing. And as real estate agents, that's where we come in, because I feel like my job is to be the glue between the attorney and the customer. The customer assumes the attorney will do everything for them, and the attorney knows they're only going to do the legal work. They're not going to do the non-legal work. And as a real estate agent, I can't do the legal work, and I don't do the non-legal work, but I can advise the customer on how to get that done, whether it be here's a vendor that does cleanup or trash outs, or how to sell cars, antiques. I mean, you name it, I've dealt with it in the course of a probate transaction.
So let's break it out into a pie. How much of the work is non-legal that you can actually help with compared to what is the lawyer actually doing to get the ball into the end zone?
I think it depends on who you're working with. So for me personally, my target audience is referrals from attorneys. So I'm dealing with legal stuff all day long that attorneys don't too. I have a case just now where on the prelim, the decedent had filed bankruptcy. It had been discharged, but there was a clerical error and the case online showed as open. And the title company was saying, "Oh, well, sorry, it's a bankruptcy. It says pending. Sorry." And these title companies, they don't really want to insure anything. They want to pay for ironclad guarantees. And I said, "Well, it's how insurance. You're supposed to insure around risk." But I went online and found that the bankruptcy case had been discharged. There was a clerical error in the file after that. That's why it showed pending. I called the bankruptcy trustee because his name's on the file. He picked up the phone, really nice attorney. Now, I just sent him an email, and I had my podcast on there, so he took my call. And he agreed that it was discharged, it was done, it was a clerical error. Yes, the title company calls me, I'll confirm that. So I'm calling the title company saying, "Hey, it's discharged, here's the discharge, here's the trustee attorney, get this off right away because we're trying to move forward." And so those are things that I do that other agents don't do because I've been in this world a bit. I think to answer your question more clearly, if your goal is to work with families who are in probate, then you just need to know enough to help them where they're at. And so that most common is, I say you want to have 3 attorneys in your pocket. One who's like an online service. All they're going to do is a basic filing where the customer is somewhat self-help, can go online and do things himself, but needs somebody to help the forms and the filing. Second's kind of a local moderate probate attorney who knows probate, basic filings, will get a little more hands-on service. And then if it's more complicated, you need somebody who's really an expert. If there's multiple errors and they're fighting and things like that. So you want to learn at least to have those 3 people in your pocket.
But in all occasions, you're going to need an attorney to get this process going. There's not an online place where they can just go and do it like a legal Zoom situation. Well,
there is, literally LegalZoom.
Okay.
You could do it yourself. I think that the county website is set up to encourage people to do it on their own. If it's a simple probate and the customer is, basically tech capable, then they can do it. And yet they need some help. Like, well, where do I get the bond? Well, I know the bond company. I can help you get that done. Oh, the bond company turned me down. I know another bond company that will get you approved. Those are kinds of things that where I come in to help them and say, I can't give you the legal advice, but I can give you the business advice to get this done. Sometimes they'll say, well, I'm going to get limit authority because they save money on the bond. I'll say, no, you're going to pay more. It's not legal advice, it's business advice. If you have limited authority, you don't need an expensive bond, you get a cheaper bond, but you have to file for court confirmation, which means you have to advertise the sale, then do the petition for the sale, and then get to the court to get your sale confirmed, and the buyer has to be willing to wait all that time. So those are things where I can't give legal advice, but I can give business advice.
Do we have the bandwidth right now to go through like a standard probate process? Like, okay, somebody dies, they don't have a will, it's not in a trust or in some sort of a protected entity. What happens next? Do we have the time to do that?
Well, help me clarify. Is our audience California-based or other states?
It's nationwide. So just in general.
So in general, the process is somebody decides they want to file to get the authority to act on behalf of the estate of the decedent. Somebody died, the things they own are their estate, and somebody says, I'll step in and do the job of acting on their behalf. Now, certain people have priority. Obviously, the spouse has very special priority. Next would be, next of kin, so children, and then siblings and parents, and every state has a little bit different variance on the order and who has priority. But somebody has to step up and file, and then in the course of doing that, they have to notify the public, and most commonly publication in a legal publication. And then certain people are entitled to know, so you have to send them notice in the mail. There's a certain way that has to get done. And then at some point you have a court hearing. Now sometimes the hearing is waived because the paperwork's done ahead of time. The court approves the paperwork ahead of time. If nobody's objecting, the judge will say, hey, we got the paperwork, it's all in order. Nobody's objecting, okay, great, then it's approved. In some cases you have to go in and see the judge. In other cases you go in and see the judge because maybe one brother wants to be the person, and so does another brother, so they both show up to try to fight over it. That's where you get into litigation. But instead of probate, you file, you get the approval, and there's some process to notify creditors, and there's some process to get a hold of the property, whether it be you get letters testamentary, letters of authority, and you use those forms from the court to get banks to give you information, get safe deposits opened up and reviewed. You can retitle cars, and you can transact property. You can open an account on behalf of the estate. So you gather all the assets, put all the money into one spot, and then when you have all that done, you tell the court, you know what, we have this amount of money, we have these expenses, we have this much net, and here's how it gets distributed based on the law. And the law will determine who the heirs are and what percentages they get, and the judge will, judge's assistant will review it and either approve your distribution request or cancel it, and then at some point the judge approves it, then you write the checks and you close out the account, you're done. Now that can take, under the best circumstances, about a year, the whole thing, but there are many, the average goes well over 2 years because it's certainly in California, certainly in Los Angeles County, it's very particular, very detail-oriented, very administrative, and if you don't follow the rules exactly, it's amazing how particular they are in those rules.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, just getting permits in certain counties is just a whole list of red tape you got to get through to be able to do it. I can only imagine the amount of red tape and bureaucracy that's involved in a probate case.
Right.
Intentionally.
I tell people that if you have a plan for your estate, the state has one for you called probate. It's like the Department of Motor Vehicles. It's just not as consumer friendly as the DMV.
That's a good way of looking at it. So in all these years of you becoming, an expert in this and almost an advocate for consumers, are you viewed negatively in the attorney space? Do they view you as, someone they don't want to work with or as an adversary?
I'm sure there's some. I think there always are people who make assumptions and don't know the information, and as a result, get their own conclusion. That's just the nature of some attorneys just hate all realtors. A lot of attorneys are just negative people, like a lot of people are negative. But by and large, I think attorneys appreciate people who are respectful and follow the system, can help them get their job done. And so I would say I feel like I have a really good reputation amongst attorneys I've worked with and know of me and see what I do. And my podcast is available, so it's not like I'm hiding anything. I think that's the other thing, that a lot of probate real estate agents kind of operate in the weeds and try to double end deals and try to take advantage of estates and work with investors to make a lot of money by doing those things. I don't represent my own buyers on listings on probate. I don't act as an investor on probates. I separately do investments. I separately do wholesaling. I separately, represent buyers on transactions. But when I list property, I don't do other things because my reputation is really important to me.
Yeah, so you're clearly just trying to create a gap there, so there's no conflict of interest, so that anybody that comes in to scrutinize that transaction couldn't say that you took advantage of them.
Correct. That'd be the one thing that would just really bother me the most, is if I had that. I saw the competition. I'll tell you a quick story. I live in a very desirable neighborhood for religious Jews. I'm religious. and we tend to be in certain neighborhoods where we can walk to synagogue. And there's only so many
Hancock
places.
Park?
Well, that's the older one. The newer one is Pico Robertson. So I live in Pico Robertson.
Okay.
Just south of Pico Boulevard and just west of Robertson. Very desirable area for people in my community. I know I have a lot of friends who want to move here. And so literally the lady across the street, we knew her. She was elderly. My wife and I knew her. We had her over for dinner several times. And she passed. I knew she passed because one night there was an ambulance and I went to the house. And then like 2 months later, the house was listed for sale. And I reached out to the listing agent to see if she was declared passed in the house, or more commonly, the ambulance scoops you up, takes you to the hospital, they declare at the hospital. Sometimes it's just a matter of the legal status, and that's what I was trying to find out for a buyer who's a personal friend of mine. And I called and texted and emailed the listing agent like 5 times each, no reply, because they looked at every listing as their personal property to double end, and therefore they sold it to a person across the street. Now it turns out the neighbor's a friend of mine. It's all worked out in that sense. But my point is, most probate business, in my experience up until I got involved here in LA, was done that way. It was all about knowing somebody, and then they'd buy it on the cheap, and then it was an investor, and they'd flip it, they gave you the listing when they brought it back to market. Nobody's really looking out for the estates. I hung my flag on, I'm going to get my customers the best deal possible, no matter what. And I do represent buyers as investors separately, and we're tough negotiators, and I know my business there. But by and large, most of my business are listings, and I don't double in it. I think that's where I'm distinctly different than most of the other probate agents across the country who've done this business for a while.
What's the biggest, I guess, negative or possibility of a deal going sideways if an agent comes in, they don't know how to manage the process? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Well, I mean, like anything else, you get sued, I guess, or get fired by your company. You know, I'm with a big company, with EXP, and you know, my reputation in the company is important. I've gotten referrals from agents around the country. I need help from the brokers regularly because I get some very complicated transactions. So I really work my reputation, and losing that would be important to me. I think the thing is that the way I would look at it, there's nothing wrong with trying to help your customer. As long as you're honest, and what you don't know, you reach out and find somebody who knows. And so if you're a newer agent, you get a probate case, go to somebody in your office, go to your broker. If you're the XP, go to the state room, reach out to me. Just because you call out, I don't need to get paid. You know, 9% of the time people call me on a deal, and I give them a little bit of advice, and they can take it from there. About 10%, I'll say, look, you have to list this property. It needs to be a sale with court confirmation. It has to be done very particularly. And as a result, I'd recommend either you get somebody like me who's done it before to partner with you on this listing. Just once. And if it's me, I'll teach you everything that goes along with it, and then you can market for the rest of your career. So I would say that there's no harm as long as you get help. And I think you can tell people, look, I don't know much about it, but I work for a company, for the XP, I'm sure it's true at other companies as well, that does hundreds of these, and we have a broker team that will help us walk through the process, and I'll work with them diligently, and you know and trust me that I won't lead you wrong and then follow through on that. So I would say there's no real risk. Just don't tell somebody something you don't know because you're insecure. And the other thing I would say is, if you're in California, read the forms. Like 99% of the questions I get are in the probate purchase agreement addendum or the probate purchase advisory addendum. And agents haven't read them. And so I'll just say, just read the form. You ask your customer to sign it. Just read it before your customer signs it. It answers most of your questions right there. Now, I get people don't remember everything, and I don't want to be like a school teacher, but I do want people to take responsibility to improve and to grow and educate themselves. And I think we spend so much energy on trying to look better and so little energy on being better. And I would challenge people, work on being better, and the business will come to you more easily.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of ego there, right? People just don't want to admit that they don't know. So they kind of just, do on-the-job training, try to figure out as they go. And I was more thinking about, is there any damage possibility to the consumer, to the person who is involved in that? Because I think about, for years I did foreclosures. And an agent comes into a foreclosure situation and they don't know the timelines. They don't know all the ways that they can, work with the courts to buy more time or, file bankruptcy or, negotiate with the bank to get, everything delayed, the person can lose their house. Right. And is there any of those sorts of risks with probate? I know that, the person who owns the asset is no longer, but what about the family?
Yeah. I have a saying that there's nothing good that happens from the day you list a property until the day the customer gets your proceeds check. Everything else is bad. Everything, every day, every hour, every minute, every dollar is bad. And so one thing is, by delaying the court case, you can make a mistake that delays things for months. For example, they might have full authority and not need to go to court to confirm a sale. But if you create uncertainty on the part of one of the other heirs, they may not approve your purchase, and as a result, force it to go to court to confirm, which is many times just a waste of time for everybody. If you have a court confirmation sale and your paperwork's not done in a timely manner, and most attorneys don't know what they're doing, then it gets delayed another month or 2 or 3 or 4. Or I had some that were delayed, and then COVID happened. They got delayed for 6 months after that. So, or it's delayed and somebody's living in the house and you can't get them out of the house. So I would say, like any real estate transaction, these are major transactions, a lot of money involved, a lot of liability, and probate's probably heightened of all those things because you already have attorneys involved. It's very easy to sue you because they're already in a court case with the judge. So I would definitely say that this is an area that if you're going to do it right, or get with experts, or talk to your broker, make sure there's somebody there who can walk you through the process so you give the customer the great service they deserve.
Yeah. And the other thing that this makes me think of is, after the NAR lawsuit, there were a lot of agents are trying to figure out how they fit into a situation where they want to represent buyers in the best way or sellers in the best way. And how do they earn their commissions, right? And I think this is a place where you can really earn your commission by knowing your craft and being able to navigate these situations. But tell me about the skill level that is required or involved in the people business, like talking with the people that are involved in this. Like, how much are you involved in, like, okay, all the kids hate each other, they're fighting, they want it all, they don't want someone else to have it. Are you involved in those discussions? Are you talking with people and trying to get them to come down to a rational level and take the emotion out and just get this thing done?
Yeah, in fact, one of the things I tell attorneys is, you can't call the other. Let's say there's 2 brothers fighting, they both have attorneys. And I'll say, and we realize the other attorney is a problem, let's say. And it happens. You can just tell. It's like the attorney just wants to rile everything up and bill hours. And so I'll say to the attorney, look, you can't call the other attorney. And you call the attorney. You can't call the other client. But I can. I'm a real estate agent. I can call anybody I want. Right? And so, not they're represented by another agent, obviously. But in this case, they're just an heir. So not only can I call them, you might say I have a duty to call them and inform them. And so I will sometimes call and say to the brother, listen, I see that you objected. I can't give you legal advice, but here's what I can tell you is going to happen. As a result of this, we now have to file advertisements that cost about $800. File a petition, that's going to cost another $500-$600. Notify everybody, that's going to cost money. Go to court, that's going to cost money. And you're going to show up, and nobody's going to pay any more for the house because you're not paying more for the house. It's not like I'm stealing it. I'm not double-ending it. I'm not involved with the commission. And you're going to end up taking the same house. It's going to take 2 or 3 more months. And you're going to spend an extra $8,000, of which half is yours. Or you can just approve the sale, and the money goes into an estate account where still is protected, and it's bonded, and there's protections for you and your money. And so I can't tell you legally what to do, but I can tell you business-wise, you're just burning money at this point. And if you have questions about how I sold the property, ask me. I'm here. I can be completely transparent. And so I've had several cases where I've talked heirs out of objecting to a sale, got them to agree to it, to move forward, and it worked out for everybody. And I think that's the thing I try to focus on. I can be tough on the other side when I have to be, but if I can also make a solution that's good for everybody, I try to make that happen.
Yeah, I can see you being really good at that. Just talking to people on a personal level. There's so much emotion that's involved in this.
Right.
Somebody I love just died, right? Maybe some of these heirs haven't talked to each other for years, and
Very common.
negative
Very common.
blood
Very
and-
dysfunctional relationships.
yeah, and so that all floats to the surface immediately, and you've got this huge financial decision to make, and
Right.
they don't understand what's going on. All they know is that they want to win, and then maybe they want to hurt somebody, like financially or emotionally.
Right.
I just imagine that these situations just get so emotionally charged.
Yeah, I think our job as realtors is to be the calm port in the storm and to keep our emotions in check at all times. And it's hard. Real estate agents can be very emotional, and because it's our commission, it's our check, it's our rent check or our mortgage payment. But it's not. It's our job. It's our business. I had a case once where a man had a affair, and he had a daughter out of this affair, and he acknowledged it was his, and of course his wife hated him over it, and he and his wife had another daughter. So you have this one daughter out of wedlock and one daughter who was in wedlock. And I don't know the law, but as I understand it, in this case, because there's a prior wife, in a probate, absent of the trust, the estate is split into two. Half goes to the first wife, half the second wife. In the case of the first woman they had a child with, it went to her. And you can imagine that the daughter of the wife, his natural daughter through marriage and all, hated this other woman. And this other woman, poor her, like she was born out of wedlock. She had no father to take care of her. She grew up in abject poverty. She was uneducated. She was emotionally a disaster, mentally a disaster. But she's coming into like $500,000. And, it was and she got an attorney, and we helped her get her share. And I'm trying to talk to the other daughter about, moving forward in the transaction. And all the daughter wanted to do was just light her on fire. That's really all she wanted to do. And, I listen to it calmly. I don't get involved, and I'm not here to judge them. I have my judgments, but it's not my job to share it with them. And so I think as realtors, we really have to look at ourselves, and this is true in every transaction, and just keep our emotions out of it, because it doesn't help. There's nothing about our emotions that's going to help solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, especially too when a lot of times, this doesn't happen all the time, but it's when it does. People hire their own family members to help them in these situations, and then they're just another family member with an opinion and some emotional baggage, bringing that to the transaction. I could just see it being a nightmare.
Can be.
Yeah. So you've had a couple good stories here of things that have happened. They were negative, right? I say good, meaning like there was a lesson to learn. Anything where like something really positive happened through a transaction where, something happened that helped everybody that was unexpected?
I think sometimes we don't see the whole picture, and we make assumptions. I had a probate once where a woman was living in the house. She was, I don't want to say she was really an ex-girlfriend, but at some point she had some sort of relationship with the decedent, and kind of moved into his house and brought in with her her whole pack of drug dealers and drug users. And this man was a veteran, and his wife was in a nursing home on the East Coast. And she was entitled to the proceeds of this $800,000 property in Carson. And it was a mess. The house was just beyond filthy. It was a drug den.
Mm.
And we were able to hire a private investigator who discovered that this woman living in the house was arrested for drugs. And then while she was out, we were able to lock her out because she had no right to be there. Now, it's difficult in some cities because some cities would still recognize her right to be there. But we were able to, it was Inglewood, we were able to get her out, lock her out, clean the house. We gave her some money, got her into a hotel, cleaned out the house, got the family valuables, and got the proceeds checked. This woman who's living in abject poverty in a nursing home in New Jersey. And as a result, she was able to upgrade her lifestyle. And I think the thing that people don't realize is, gee, it's so harsh. You evicted this woman. Oh, she's having problems. She has emotional problems and drugs and such. Yeah, but how about the wife? Right? You're focused on this person who's squatting in the house and by the way, doing drugs. Imagine living next door with your teenage kids to this drug dealer house that we're supposed to be sympathetic to not evicting her. Really, why would we be sympathetic to that? But let's have sympathy for the wife of the veteran who died, who left this house free and clear to his wife to give her a good lifestyle. And this probate process took like 2 years to get this lady out, get her evicted out and all that. And so meanwhile, this woman's living in some hellhole nursing home that her husband had provided for her not to live like that. And so I think sometimes we see part of the picture and get to an assumption. My job is to take care of my customers. And, I really try not to make judgments along the way. But I get from people sometimes, hey, how can you be so harsh to Victor? Well, you tell that to the wife. You tell that to the wife who's living in poverty and her husband provided for her not to. You tell that to her. When you're done with that conversation, let me know how you feel. Because I think sometimes we just have to, we're sympathetic for what's in front of us and we don't understand there's a bigger picture sometimes. Yeah. So I'm very blessed to have it. I'll tell you one other quick story that's positive. So one of the things I do a lot is advance heirs money. So some of you might have a probate and they're entitled to $500,000, but it won't close for a year. They don't get paid until the probate closes, not when the house closes. And so this woman called me one day and said, and she was in tears. She said, my auntie died. She was really kind of like my grandma. And she really raised me. My mother really wasn't around. My mother's no drugs. But this auntie, she took care of me and she's kind of like my mother, grandmother, my whole life. And she died, and she's in the funeral home, and nobody has money to bury her. And I'd like to do something. And when I come in at $500,000, can I get some of it now? And I got her, she asked for $20,000 to do the funeral and get the car and to get her buried and get some sort of a headstone. And she called me back in tears. She was so happy to fulfill that role for her auntie. And I would try to say, well, that's really expensive money. She got $20,000, she paid back $28,000. Yeah, it's very expensive. But guess what? It's her money. She's an adult. And it made her life. Like, she was so proud of herself.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we have to really focus on doing good for our customers and not getting caught up in our own judgments.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Bill, we've had a good discussion here about probates, maybe created more questions than answers. So if anybody out here does have questions, they want to reach out to you, where can they find you? I'm all over social media at Bill Gross Probate. That's my YouTube channel and my social media at Bill Gross Probate. You can call me 310-210-0008. And be glad to help if I can. Feel free if you have questions. I have a link where I offer a free 15-minute coaching call for anybody who has questions. I don't sell coaching. I don't sell data. I'm just a real estate broker selling houses and selling agents and investors and homeowners on the American dream. So thank you for the chance to talk to you, Benson. I really appreciate getting a chance to talk to your platform. You got it. And where is your podcast published, Probate Weekly? Where can they find that? On YouTube. YouTube? Yeah, at Bill Gross Probate's the YouTube channel, and you'll see their Probate Weekly. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for the time. And everybody, thank you for listening. Really appreciate you jumping onto this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Go check out Bill Gross's podcast, Probate Weekly, on YouTube. I'm sure you're going to have a bunch of great stories and more education and things that you can learn there. Maybe just enough to get you interested to niching down and looking at probates yourself. There's so much noise out there about what's going on in the probate world there, and I'm sure Bill's advice and expertise will be able to help you figure that out. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.